There's a bit of a funny story behind me playing Dex. I wasn't planning on it, but when last year's winter sale started, I noticed it was among the oldest games on my wishlist and incredibly cheap. One of my friends really likes this game and sometimes recommends it to me, so as a joke, I sent him a screenshot with the following messages. 10 fucking years, cheaper than a Trento, and I'm still putting off buying it. Not in a malicious, this game's not even worth a few dimes sort of way. It's just that my backlog is massive already and I didn't want to add it to my ever-growing pile of shame. Then my friend gave it to me as a Christmas gift. Well, I had to play it now. And you know what? I'm glad I did, not just because of the game itself, which is definitely worth the price of a small chocolate coated wafer, but also because in an unexpected coincidence, I discovered it is also related to the Kingdom Deliverance series. Also, as a heads up, if you've bought this game on Steam, be sure to also get the extra outfits DLC. I don't know why the developers decided to separate it out of the main game like that, especially considering the GOG version included by default, but hey, who knows? Valve can be weird sometimes. This DLC adds 3 different outfits to find in the world, each with their own unique features, and using them makes the gameplay a lot more fun. Anyway, I'm Enchanter and this is my Dex review. I hope you enjoy it.
How's it going, Blue?
Dex is an indie 2D side-scrolling cyberpunk action RPG released in 2015 by a small Czech studio named Dreadlocks. In terms of technical and quality of life features, Dex offers a casual difficulty mode and the usual Unity options for resolutions, VSync, anti-aliasing, and overall graphical quality. The graphical quality options don't really seem to do anything, but let's be honest, you're unlikely to need them anyway. I didn't crash even once during my playthrough, but I did run into a bug where Dex would start climbing an invisible ladder. It's nothing serious, but it did happen often enough to become annoying. Other than that, I only have 2 observations to make. First, while Dex fully supports controllers, it resets to mouse and keyboard mode every single time I start up the game. It's easy enough to switch it back to controller in the options menu, but an annoyance nonetheless. Second, the resolution options are the worst I've seen in a long time. It's one of those where you have to go through every resolution known to man, including 4:3 aspect ratios which are as obsolete as they come, along with variations for different refresh rates, so you end up having to go through literally dozens of different options while trying to find yours. Luckily, as an ultrawide user, I didn't actually have to deal with this. Dex doesn't officially support 21:9 resolutions, but as an Unity game, you can force it by going into the launch options and typing the good old command to set the screen size to whatever you want. It works perfectly though with one potential issue. Side-scrollers often suffer from some serious balance issues when run on a wider aspect ratio, and I definitely felt like the extra screen space allowed me to stay out of my enemy's field of view a lot more easily than what was probably intended by the developers, so keep that in mind. The game starts right in the middle of the action as the main character Dex is rudely woken out of her dramatic dream monologue by Rayest, some guy whose avatar seems like a cross between Alfred Bester and the Silver Surfer, showing up on her screen, telling her the police is about to storm her apartment and finding a hacker by the name of Decker is her only chance of surviving. After a brief tutorial where Dex shows herself capable of doing all those things we expect a player character to be able to do, jumping, climbing, choking and punching her way through rooftops and sewers, she finds Decker's bar and is immediately sent by Decker to find his friend Tony's hideout while he helps throw her pursuers off her trail. Tony at first doesn't seem to be very thrilled about sheltering a fugitive, but it's not long before Decker arrives and Rayest explains what's going on. You see, Dex is a very special young woman. In a high-tech world where Wi-Fi doesn't seem to exist, she is the only person capable of hacking stuff wirelessly. No messy cables, no invasive surgery whatsoever. Don't worry though, there will be plenty of that later. Rayest isn't particularly interested in explaining how or why, but he's certain that means she's the avatar of Ether, a rogue AI that escaped containment from the Complex, this game's obligatory secretive organization that rules everything from the shadows, and in the few seconds of freedom it enjoyed before being attacked by a virus created for just such an occasion, it managed to transfer part of itself into a human brain to quietly grow stronger and one day tip the scales back in its favor. Presumably, the Complex found this after all these years and sent their men to nip that threat in the bud, only to be thwarted by Reyes. They aren't the sort to give up easily, so despite Dexter's skepticism about the whole second coming of Jesus thing, he at least agrees that Dexter's life is in danger and if she's to survive, she needs to, in his own words,
Level the hell up.
and that means she needs guns, more guns, bigger guns, better guns, and cyberware, and just plain old XP of course. Reyes' ambitions don't stop there though, and he soon contacts them again with plans to take the fight back to the Complex, wherein she learns the truth about her own origins and the Complex's plans. And then the game ends. Now, I want you to know that I'm making fun of the main plot because it honestly starts off a bit generic, and the idea of Chosen One style stories is something I especially dislike, but the way they handled this one was actually kind of interesting. Without venturing too far in spoiler territory, some of the supporting characters have surprising depth to them, as does the Complex itself, and the end result made sense even if it wasn't entirely unexpected. Plus, the developers took a page out of the open world design handbook and filled the game with a bunch of interesting side missions that help flesh out the game setting. Next, and help find missing people, fight off street gangs, investigate rogue companies, and everything else you'd expect from a cyberpunk adventure.
Now, I gotta get back to looking like I still need satisfying.
And it was fun figuring out the way that side content fits together to form a picture of the city's rotten underbelly. Since this is a small indie game made on a shoestring budget and not a massive AAA open-world RPG, it's a rather short affair. It took me about 15 hours to 100% it, mostly because of the side missions, and it stood to me as proof that you can still build a fun story out of familiar concepts, as long as they don't overstay their welcome. The main story is short and sweet, and the side missions each deal with their own unrelated situations, so most of the game ends up feeling as a sort of greatest hit anthology of cyberpunk short stories. Where that really shines is in its production values. The sprite work looks great in motion, as you can see, the music is a suitable mix of the orchestral, cinematic scores we often hear in gaming, and the synth-heavy melodies you'd expect in a good cyberpunk thriller, and most surprising of it all of the dialogue except for Dex's is fully voiced, and there's a lot of it. Seriously, I wouldn't be surprised if the game's install size was like 75% voice acting. There's just so much, far more than most indie games out there, and it contributes a lot towards making the game more immersive. And that's when we arrive at the unlikeliest coincidence I've seen in a long time. From the start, I felt like a bunch of characters sounded familiar, but it was only when I talked to Navarro that I realized.
Could it be anything? Oh, unless you give me some assistance.
Hold on, that's Captain Bernard.
Good. That's how to treat the bastards.
And Miller Razio.
You are an odd pair, alright.
And Abbot Jan.
You think I'd be alarmed over nothing?
And a bunch of other people. Look, there's a reason I recognize his voice right away.
Hear what I've got for you?
That made me curious, so I looked it up on Moby Games and realized that out of a total of 40 VAs, 16 later went to work on the Kingdom Come Deliverance games, a number that seems even more impressive when you realize 19 of these 40 never worked in another game again, so it's more like 16 out of 21 really. It didn't take much sniffing around to find out why. It seems both Dreadlocks and Warhorse Studios hired the Prague Film and Theatre Center for their casting, so it's not like there's a very interesting mystery behind it, but I found it funny how, having just finished Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, I still had all these actors fresh in my memory, but it was only because of my friend's insistence, a friend who never touched the Kingdom Come series by the way. It was only because of him that I found this out. Anyway, as you might expect, I really enjoyed the voice acting in this game. The performance on some actors seemed a bit off, and some of them seemed a bit too heavy on the stereotypes, but most of them sounded very good overall. I'd like to highlight Tony's VA especially, as he managed to tread this very fine line between sounding like an obnoxious person without turning it into an obnoxious performance.
I guess you could call me his Rock. The T-Rock.
And then, we get to the gameplay. Let me be clear from the start, this is not a game you buy for the gameplay. Buy it for the story? Sure, maybe. Buy it for the setting? Totally. But if you buy this game expecting some amazing action, you will be disappointed. Even calling it acceptable might be stretching it. In reality, it's a shallow, easily exploitable, unbalanced mess. It all starts with the melee combat. Dex's basic punches hold no weight to them, so you're stuck waiting for the enemy to attack first so you can punch them during the recovery animation, otherwise you just end up trading blows, and believe me when I say this, you will lose every time. It takes a lot of points investment until you unlock the ability to stun enemies after a combo, and even then, the stun only happens after 4 hits, so you still end up getting punched a couple of times before pulling it off. You can easily unlock a leg sweep that knocks enemies down, but guess what? It does no damage and they become immune to melee attacks until they get up, so it's only useful if you feel like spending ammunition. There are no grabs, no parries, no melee weapons, just your fists and the constant need to exploit their barely functional AI to avoid getting hit. Ranged combat is as basic as it comes. You pull out your gun, point it at your enemy and shoot. Interestingly, that stacks ammo by way of reloads and not individual bullets, so you are discouraged from constantly reloading by the fact that she just chucks the rest of her magazine away whenever you do. Other than that, the game is sorely missing over mechanics of any sort, a must for any slow-paced side-scrolling game with gunplay, as it is the only way to allow the player to avoid just standing there and taking every single hit while aiming. You'd expect combat would shine by combining both systems into a methodical dance where the player often switches between melee and ranged according to the situation, but Dex has to put her gun away before punching, and the animation to pull it out takes forever and doesn't get any quicker even if you max out your ranged skill, meaning your enemies will have plenty of chances of hitting you if they are anywhere close when you try. Adding insult to injury, ranged enemies do not have this limitation. They can just hit you with the butt of their gun anytime, stunning you and allowing them to move away and shoot before you recover. Tying it all down is the fact that the resources are limited and a couple of bad runs can easily eat through your supplies. There are no respawns in the game at all, not for items nor enemies, which enhances the feeling of being in an actual cyberpunk dystopia, sure, but can easily lead you into an unwinnable state if you try to play fair and not abuse the enemy AI or the AR hacking mechanics. To be clear, I don't mind being resource constrained in a game, I just hate it when I feel like there's no way for me to conserve those resources by playing well or being smart about my choices. And no, standing on a stairwell, punching my enemy's feet while he punches ineffectually at the air above my head is not being smart. That's me being an ass and abusing the lackluster enemy AI. AR hacking is the meat of the game as far as I'm concerned. Anytime you want, at the press of a button, you can enter AR mode, which opens up a twin-stick shooter overlay of sorts and reveals a bunch of different nodes you can try to hack. Cameras, turrets, vending machines, and especially enemies. Starting a hack causes you to be attacked by viruses who drain your focus bar. Losing all your focus is an immediate 50-point damage to Dex as she gets violently thrown out of AR mode, but you can also leave at any time to stop that from happening. Successful hacks do what you would expect. Cameras break, turrets start treating you as an ally and target your enemies, vending machines give you money, and hacking enemies stuns them for a brief period. And that's just the most overpowered ability you would hope for, as it allows you to instantly perform a stealth kill on them. Almost every enemy is weak to that strategy, and focus is the only resource you can always recover for free no matter what, so you can just keep doing it. Lastly, you'll often be required to hack computer terminals, which act kinda like dungeons. The hacking mechanics are the same, but you can only leave by reaching an exit, so there's no way to easily restore your focus, making it a more dangerous proposition. There are also harder enemies like turrets and black holes that you have to deal with. Overall, out of all the gameplay aspects, these dungeons were my favorite. Navigating around a server, getting ambushed by viruses, having to be quick on my joystick to dodge enemy shots, it all felt like I was playing an old Geometry Wars prototype. Not amazing, mind you, Geometry Wars is way better, but compared to the rest of the combat, yeah, I'd rather just do this. So, to sum it up, that is not a great game. The combat especially is pretty bad, but it depicts a very good looking, well realized, well written, well acted game world that walks you through a familiar story in an interesting way. I wouldn't put it in any Game of the Year list, but for the asking price, especially on sale, it would do a lot worse. If you like cyberpunk stories as I do, and if you're looking for a shorter game to play after spending over 200 hours in a AAA juggernaut as I did, this is a great choice. Just remember to set your expectations accordingly. Anyway, this is all from me for this video. As always, feedback is appreciated and I thank you for watching. See you later, bye!